Have you ever noticed how someone's sudden attention can feel like sunlight after a long, dark winter, only for them to disappear the moment they no longer need you? There is a strange kind of pain in being someone's comfort when they are lonely, but remaining completely invisible when their life feels whole again. If you have ever felt stuck, anxious, emotionally exhausted, or like you are waiting by a door that only opens when it is convenient for someone else, this is for you. Stay until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you see this pain forever. When someone reaches out to you with warmth, affection, and deep interest, it is natural to open your heart. You feel seen, you feel valued. You receive a thoughtful message late at night. They want to talk, they listen, they share their thoughts, and for a brief moment, you feel a profound sense of connection. You go to sleep believing that something real has finally taken root. But then, the next day, there is only silence. The days turn into weeks. The warmth vanishes as quickly as it arrived, leaving you in a quiet panic, replaying every word, wondering what you did wrong. But here is the truth few people want to face. Most of your suffering in these moments is not actually caused by their sudden distance. It is caused by how tightly you are holding on to the story of what their distance means. When they pull away, your mind immediately whispers a cruel lie. You are not enough. Buddhist wisdom offers a completely different perspective on this suffering. In Buddhist thought, we are reminded of the truth of impermanence, the reality that everything, including human emotion and attention, is constantly shifting. We suffer not because things change, but because we expect fleeting things to remain permanent. We attach our entire sense of self-worth to a condition that was never stable to begin with. Imagine a traveler wandering through a dark forest on a cold night. They stumble upon your quiet clearing, shivering, and decide to build a campfire. For a few hours, the flames are bright, the heat is beautiful. You sit together in the glow, and the darkness retreats. But when morning comes, the traveler packs their bag and walks away, because they were only looking for temporary warmth, not a permanent home. When they leave, you are left sitting in the cold ashes. But ask yourself, did the fire die because you were unworthy of the light? Or did it die simply because the traveler no longer needed the warmth? Think about your own life. How often do you blame yourself for someone else's changing seasons? How many times have you carried the heavy burden of their silence, convinced that if you were just a little better, a little more interesting, or a little more loving, they would have stayed by the fire? Pause, breathe. Observe this thought without following it into the dark. You do not have to chase what is already leaving. You do not need to endlessly analyze their silence. When the feeling of rejection rises in your chest, let it rise without making it your identity. Let them walk away without turning their footsteps into a story about your failure. Because peace is not something you chase, it is something you make space for by refusing to build your foundation on someone else's passing loneliness. But letting go of the illusion of borrowed warmth is only the first step. Once the fire fades, a deeper wound often reveals itself, and this is where the next truth begins. 2. Why their emptiness feels like your failure. What if the heavy silence they leave behind has absolutely nothing to do with your worth, and everything to do with their own inner void? Here is a truth that is difficult to accept when your heart is hurting. When someone only comes to you in their moments of deep loneliness, they are not actually seeing you. They are using you as a mirror to escape their own reflection. They are looking for a distraction, a temporary shelter from their own restless mind. And yet, when their mood shifts and they abruptly leave, you are the one left standing in the cold, wondering what you did wrong. You replay the last conversation. You analyze the sudden shift in their tone. You wonder if you replied too quickly, or shared too much, or cared too deeply. You take their sudden absence and you weave it into a painful, suffocating story. You tell yourself that you are forgettable. You tell yourself that you are only a placeholder until someone better comes along. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us the profound practice of seeing things exactly as they are, without adding our own suffering to the picture. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is understanding that the actions of others are born from their own karma, their own conditions, and their own suffering. When someone acts out of a deep inner lack, their erratic behavior is a reflection of their own unquiet mind, not a judgment of your value. Imagine a clear, still lake resting quietly at the bottom of a mountain. One afternoon, dark, heavy clouds roll across the sky. The lake reflects the darkness. The water looks grey and uninviting. But the lake does not believe it has become the storm. It does not blame itself for the shadow. It simply rests in its own depth, knowing the clouds belong to the sky, and they will eventually drift away. When someone is struggling with their own loneliness, they are like those passing clouds. They bring their heavy energy, their desperate need for comfort, and they cast a shadow over your peace. But you are the lake. Their emptiness is not your failure. Their inability to stay is not a reflection of your depth. Think about your own life, especially in moments when you feel ignored or cast aside. When they drift away without explanation, what is the first thought that enters your mind? Do you immediately search for your own flaws? Ask yourself, is this thought bringing you peace or feeding your fear? Stop trying to solve the mystery of someone else's confusion. Pause. Breathe. The next time the silence feels loud, remind yourself that you do not have to absorb their weather. You can observe their distance without taking it into your heart. Do your part. Offer kindness when you choose to, but then release the outcome. Stop trying to force a connection with someone who is only looking for an escape. You do not have to prove your worth to someone who cannot see beyond their own temporary needs. Let the feeling of inadequacy rise. Look at it and realize it does not belong to you. It was simply handed to you by someone who did not know what to do with their own pain. But releasing this story requires us to look honestly at why we accepted that fleeting warmth in the first place. And this is where the next truth begins. Because the mind will always chase what it believes it is missing. 3. The danger of clinging to temporary affection. What if the hardest part of being left behind is not their physical absence, but your own mind desperately trying to recreate a moment that has already passed? Here is a difficult truth. When someone gives you exactly what you have been craving, attention, validation, a sense of being chosen, it feels intoxicating. Even if you know it will not last, you hold on to it. You tolerate weeks of cold silence just for a few hours of their warmth. You put your own peace on hold. You stare at a silent screen, replaying old conversations, hoping for a notification to bring the connection back to life. You convince yourself that the tiny crumbs of affection they offer are enough to sustain you, simply because you are terrified of an empty plate. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that attachment is the root of our deepest suffering. We suffer because we refuse to accept the law of impermanence. In Buddhist thought, the pain you feel right now is not caused by the person leaving. It is caused by your mind clinging to the desire for them to stay. We mistakenly believe that if we just hold on tight enough, we can force a temporary feeling to become a permanent reality. But the tighter you hold, the more you suffer. Imagine sitting quietly in a garden when a beautiful wild bird suddenly lands on your open hand. For a moment, it is magical. You feel a rare connection, but soon the bird shifts its weight, preparing to fly back into the sky. In a sudden panic, terrified of losing the moment, you close your fingers to trap it. But the moment you tighten your grip, the beauty of the connection dies. You are no longer experiencing a peaceful visit. You have become a cage, holding on to something that is fighting to leave. How often do we do this with the people in our lives? You feel them pulling away, they stop reaching out. Their warmth turns into distance, and instead of letting them take flight, you tighten your grip. You send more messages. You ask, what is wrong? You try to force the connection back to life. You trap yourself in a cycle of anxiety, hoping that if you try hard enough, you can make them stay. Ask yourself, what are you truly holding on to? Are you holding on to a real, stable connection that nurtures your soul? Or are you simply clutching the memory of a fleeting moment, terrified of being alone again? What are you afraid will happen if you finally open your hand and let them go? Pause, breathe. Do not close your fist around something that is already leaving. When the urge to chase them, fix the situation, or wait for their return arises, observe the thought without following it. Let the feeling of craving rise without making it your master. You cannot control a wild bird, and you cannot control another person's heart. Stop trying to force the door open when they have clearly chosen to close it. You do not have to live in a cage of your own making. You can open your hand, because peace begins the exact moment you stop fighting reality. But to truly let go of the pain, you must learn to witness their behavior without making it a story about your worth. And this is where the next truth begins. 4. Seeing their actions without adding your story. What if the sharpest pain you feel does not actually come from their silence, but from the story you have written about their silence? Here is the truth few people want to face. When someone pulls away, the mind hates empty space. If they do not give you a clear reason for their sudden distance, your mind will instantly invent one. You look at an unanswered message, a distant tone of voice, or a cancelled plan, and you begin writing a tragedy. You tell yourself, they found someone better. You whisper in the dark, I am too much, or I am not important enough to keep around. You take a simple, neutral event, someone being entirely focused on their own shifting moods, and you turn it into a devastating verdict about your own self-worth. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us the profound practice of separating what is actually happening from the narrative we are projecting onto it. In Buddhist thought, there is the initial event, and then there is our reaction to the event. The initial event is simply their absence. It is neutral. It is just a moment in time where they are not there. The reaction is the story that you are unlovable. Buddhism reminds us that we suffer mostly because we confuse our painful stories with reality. Imagine walking alone through a quiet forest just as the sun sets. As the shadows grow long, you suddenly see a massive, terrifying shape looming ahead on the path. Your heart races. Your mind immediately tells you it is a dangerous beast waiting to strike. You freeze in fear, trapped by the terrifying story your mind has created. But as you gather the courage to take a few steps closer, a beam of moonlight breaks through the branches, revealing that the shape is simply an old, twisted tree stump. The stump did not change. The beast was never real. The terror existed entirely in the story your mind painted over the darkness. When someone who only wants you for temporary comfort suddenly goes quiet, their silence is just a tree stump in the dark. It is nothing more than a person returning to their own complicated life. But your fear of being left behind paints a monster over that silence. You convince yourself that their distance is a punishment for who you are. Think about your own life. When the person you care about pulls away, what story do you immediately tell yourself? Do you instantly search for your own flaws? Ask yourself, are you seeing their actions clearly, or are you looking through the lens of your own deepest insecurities? Is this story bringing you peace or feeding your fear? Pause, breathe. The next time you face their quiet withdrawal, just let it be quiet. Observe the thought of rejection without following it down the path. Let the empty space remain empty, without rushing to fill it with self-blame. Stop trying to read their mind and begin returning to your own. Because peace is not found in finally getting the answer you want from them. It is found in realizing you do not need their explanation to be whole, but learning to drop the story is only part of the journey. You must also learn how to let their unpredictable energy pass by without letting it destroy your calm. And this is where the next truth begins. 5. The metaphor of the passing storm. What if you stopped trying to control the weather and instead learned how to stand steady in the rain? Here is a truth we often forget when our emotions are tangled with someone else's unpredictable attention. You cannot reason with a storm, and you cannot force another person to be consistent when their own mind is in chaos. When they come to you seeking comfort, their sudden warmth feels like a beautiful sunny afternoon. You relax your guard. You open your heart. But the moment their loneliness fades and they begin to withdraw, the atmosphere shifts instantly. The sky darkens. The air grows cold. You feel frantic, desperately trying to fix their mood, trying to hold on to the sunlight, getting swept away in the turbulence of their changing energy. You spend your days watching their every move, studying their short replies, waiting for the exact moment they will disappear again. It is utterly exhausting to base your inner peace on someone else's unpredictable seasons. Buddhist wisdom teaches the profound practice of non-reactivity. It is the art of standing still while the world moves around you. In Buddhist thought, the path to peace is not found in trying to stop the shifting circumstances of life or forcing the people around us to remain calm. The goal is to cultivate an unshakable inner stillness. It is the deep realization that external conditions, especially the fleeting moods of others, are entirely out of your control, but your reaction to them is always within your power. Imagine a deeply rooted ancient tree standing quietly on the edge of a vast, open field. One afternoon, a violent storm rolls in. The wind howls, and heavy rain lashes against the branches. But the tree does not panic. It does not uproot itself and try to chase the storm away. It does not beg the clouds to stop raining, and it does not blame itself for the darkness of the sky. It simply sinks its roots deeper into the earth and lets the wind blow. The branches may bend and the leaves may shake, but the core of the tree remains solid. The storm rages, but eventually, as all storms do, it passes. The tree remains. The people who reach out only when they are lonely are exactly like that passing storm. They blow into your life with intense, needy energy, disrupt your quiet peace, and then move on when the winds change. When you react to their distance, when you beg them to stay, when you endlessly text them, when you alter your entire day based on their silence, you are no longer the tree. You are a fragile leaf getting violently tossed in their wind. You lose your center entirely. Think about your own life. When someone's affection suddenly turns cold, how quickly do you abandon your own peace to chase after them? Ask yourself, are you standing firm in your own worth? Or are you letting someone else's chaotic weather determine your emotional survival? Pause. Breathe. The next time they pull away, do not chase them into the wind. Let the storm pass without becoming the storm. Observe their withdrawal, but keep your roots firmly planted in the quiet earth of your own life. You do not have to fix their weather, because true peace is not found in a sky that never rains. It is found in the undeniable strength of your own roots. But standing still in the rain requires us to break a very deep, very painful habit. And this is where the next truth begins. 6. Breaking the cycle of waiting for their return. What if the most exhausting thing in your life right now is not the person who keeps leaving, but your own quiet refusal to stop waiting for them to come back? Here is the difficult truth. When someone uses your warmth as a cure for their temporary loneliness, they establish a deeply unbalanced rhythm. They disappear, and you endure the painful silence. You mourn the loss of the connection. You begin to heal. You start focusing on your own life again. And then, just when you are finding your footing, a message arrives. A sudden spark of attention. They are lonely again, and they remember how warm your fire is, and immediately you drop everything. You rush back into the connection, completely abandoning the peace you just fought so hard to build, simply because you are addicted to the brief high of being wanted. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this cycle is the very definition of suffering. We suffer not because we are trapped by others, but because we continually build the cage and step inside, willingly locking the door behind us. In Buddhist thought, this is the cycle of craving and disappointment. We believe that this time, things will be different. We believe that if we offer just enough comfort, just enough love, their temporary visit will turn into a permanent stay. But a well that only flows when someone else is thirsty is not a relationship. It is a profound draining of your own vital energy. Imagine a small, sturdy boat tied to a dock on a vast, quiet ocean. You are sitting on the dock, waiting for the tide to bring a specific wave back to shore. You sit there for days, weeks, months. Every time a small ripple reaches the wood, you jump up, hoping it is the massive wave you have been waiting for. You spend your entire life watching the water, completely ignoring the boat waiting to carry you across the ocean. The tragedy is not that the wave never arrives. The tragedy is that you let your entire life pass you by, while you waited for water that was never meant to stay. How often do you do this with the people who only want you when it is convenient? You put your emotional life on hold. You keep a space open for them, terrified to move forward, hoping that their next message will be the one that finally proves they care. You abandon the journey of your own life to sit on a dock, waiting for someone else's tide to turn. Think about your own life. How much of your vital energy is currently tied up in waiting for someone who only shows up when they have nothing better to do? Ask yourself, what are you neglecting in your own life while you stare at the horizon, hoping they will return? Pause, breathe. You have the power to untie the boat. The next time they disappear, do not leave the porch light on. Stop holding space for an inconsistent presence. Let the urge to wait rise without making it your master. You are not required to be a resting stop on someone else's journey, because true freedom is found the exact moment you realize you do not need them to return in order to move forward. But untying the boat requires us to radically shift how we view their journey entirely, and this is where the next truth begins. 7. The Buddhist practice of letting people be. What if the greatest act of love you can offer both to them and to yourself is simply letting them be exactly who they are, without trying to change them? Here is a truth that goes against every instinct of a caring heart. When someone comes to you seeking comfort, and you see their deep loneliness, your immediate desire is to heal them. You want to prove to them that they do not have to be lonely anymore. You try to weave their inconsistent actions into a beautiful story, hoping that if you just love them enough, they will finally realize your worth and choose to stay. You exhaust your own spirit trying to decode their mixed signals, desperately trying to mold their temporary need for attention into a permanent bond. But Buddhist wisdom teaches a deeply liberating concept, the practice of pure acceptance. In Buddhist thought, much of our suffering stems from our relentless desire to bend reality to our will. We suffer because we demand that people be ready when they are not. We demand consistency from a mind that is currently trapped in its own chaos. To truly love, in a spiritual sense, is to observe someone's journey without trying to force it to match your own timeline. It is the quiet, powerful act of letting people be exactly as they are. Imagine standing on the bank of a fast-moving river. As you watch the water, you see a fragile piece of driftwood spinning in the current. For a brief moment, the water pushes the wood toward the shore, right at your feet. You pick it up, you admire it, you hold it in your hands. But the river is strong, and soon the water pulls the wood back out into the rushing current. If you dive in and try to hold on to it, the freezing water will pull you under, dragging you down into the turbulence. The only way to stay safe on the bank is to open your hands and let the wood continue down the river. It has its own journey. It is bound for the ocean, and it was never meant to stay in your hands. The person who only seeks you out in their loneliness is like that driftwood. They are caught in the current of their own unresolved pain, their own restless habits. When they wash up on your shore, it is only for a fleeting moment. If you try to hold them there against the current, you will only be dragged into their turbulent waters. Think about your own life. How much effort have you wasted trying to convince someone to stay when they were clearly fighting to leave? Ask yourself, are you loving them for exactly who they are right now? Or are you holding on to a fantasy of who they could be? Pause. Breathe. The next time they begin to drift away, do not reach out to pull them back. Let the urge to fix them pass. Let them follow their own current. You do not have to abandon them in anger, but you also do not have to throw yourself into the freezing river to save them from a journey they must walk alone. Because true peace is not found in finally getting them to anchor themselves to your shore. It is found when you stop fighting their need to leave. But once you stop trying to control their path, you must finally turn your attention back to your own. And this is where the next truth begins. 8. Reclaiming your own inner sanctuary. What if the energy you have spent trying to keep someone else warm is the exact energy you need to rebuild your own home? Here is a truth that is easy to forget when you are caught in the cycle of giving. When you constantly cater to someone who only arrives when they are lonely, you begin to empty yourself. You leave your own door wide open, waiting for their knock. You keep your schedule flexible. You sacrifice your own quiet evenings, your hobbies, and your peace of mind, just in case they decide to reach out. Over time, you give away so much of your emotional reserve that your own inner world becomes a waiting room. You forget what it feels like to rest in your own presence without needing someone else to validate your existence. But Buddhist wisdom offers a gentle, profound reminder. You must take refuge in yourself. In Buddhist thought, true peace is never found by seeking shelter in the shifting, unpredictable minds of others. It is found by cultivating your own inner sanctuary. We are taught that the mind, when left unattended and constantly focused outward, becomes scattered and exhausted. To heal, you must gather your attention and bring it back home. You must realize that your worth does not depend on being a resting place for someone else's temporary pain. Imagine a beautiful, quiet house sitting on a hill. Inside there is a hearth meant for a warm, roaring fire. But instead of living inside the house, you have spent months standing out in the cold rain, holding a small lantern, desperately trying to guide a passing traveler toward your door. While you stand outside in the storm waiting for them, your own house grows dark, cold, and dusty. The hearth goes unlit. The home you were meant to enjoy has been completely abandoned, not by the traveler, but by you. This is what happens when you make yourself endlessly available to someone who only wants you when it is convenient. You abandon your own sanctuary. You forget to light your own fire. You let the core of your life grow cold while you wait for someone who is simply passing through. Think about your own life. Look at the places where you feel most exhausted, most anxious, most drained. How long has it been since you tended to your own fire? Ask yourself, what would happen if you took all the love, all the patience, and all the deep attention you keep pouring into their empty cup and finally poured it back into your own? Pause. Breathe. Step out of the cold. The next time you feel the urge to wait by the door, gently turn around. Go inside your own mind. Light the fire of your own self-respect. You are allowed to close the door. You are not required to be on call for someone else's emotional emergencies. Spend time with your own silence without needing it to be broken by their voice. Stop giving the best parts of your spirit to someone who only visits when they have nowhere else to go. Because true peace is never found in being chosen by a lonely heart. It is found in the quiet, undeniable power of finally choosing yourself. But returning home is only the preparation for the final release. And this is where the ultimate truth begins. 9. The ultimate freedom in walking away. What if the most beautiful chapter of your life begins the exact moment you finally stop waiting for someone else to write it? In the beginning, we talked about the strange, sharp pain of being someone's sunlight after a long winter, only to be cast into the shadows when they no longer need your warmth. We spoke of the quiet panic, the heavy silence, and the cruel story your mind writes when they abruptly disappear. But as we have traveled through these truths, a deeper reality has emerged. We learned that you are the deep, quiet lake, and their unpredictable moods are simply passing clouds. We learned that trying to cage a wild bird only destroys the beauty of the connection. We realized that standing in their turbulent rain will never bring you peace, and that abandoning your own home to wait in the cold only leaves your spirit entirely exhausted. The pain you feel right now is not actually about their absence. It is about the fact that you have been abandoning yourself to keep them. You have been standing by a locked door, holding a heavy ring of keys, trying every single one, hoping that if you just try hard enough, you can force them to let you in. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us that there is no peace in forcing what is meant to flow. The ultimate freedom is found in the profound realization that you do not need to turn the key. You do not need to open their door. You can simply drop the keys, turn around, and walk away. Walking away is often misunderstood. We think it must be a loud, angry declaration. We think it requires a confrontation, a final demanding message, or a dramatic exit. But in Buddhist thought, true non-attachment is perfectly quiet. It is not an act of resentment. It is an act of deep, quiet self-respect. It is the simple, peaceful decision to stop investing your spirit in an empty space. Imagine standing up from the cold ashes of that campfire we spoke of earlier. You brush off your hands. You look out into the quiet forest. You do not hate the traveler for leaving. You do not curse the fire for burning out. You simply recognize that the night is over, and it is time to continue your own journey. Think about the immense, beautiful energy you will reclaim when you finally stop trying to solve the mystery of their silence. Ask yourself, what could you build with all the love you have been wasting on someone who only wants you in pieces? You are not a temporary shelter. You are not a mirror for someone else's loneliness. You are a complete, breathing, deeply worthy human being. Even when the room is entirely quiet, pause, breathe, let that sink in. You no longer have to carry the heavy burden of their shifting weather. You do not have to untangle the knots in their mind. When they reach out again, driven by their own passing shadows, you do not have to answer the call. You can observe their return, wish them peace from a distance, and gently keep walking, because you have finally realized that your worth was never tied to their fleeting attention. The warmth was never theirs to take away. You were the fire all along. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.